Hey guys, we are back updating the power rankings for Big Brother 25 during week 6, and this week has been pretty interesting in terms of gameplay, and there's obviously a lot to get into here. Now, I am recording this on Tuesday, September 12th, and I'll be including all live feed spoilers, including veto results, so if you don't want to be spoiled, you can click out the video now. But there are 13 players to talk about, and let's not waste any more time, let's get right into the video. So starting off at number 13, we have the latest person to be voted out of the game, and here we have Red. And this was actually a shift in the target compared to last week's video. At the time, it did seem like Jag was probably going to go home, where even with the talk of the flip, given the previous weeks, it seemed like there was a good chance that the flip was going to go back to Jag going home. However, it actually stuck this time, and we actually got a legitimate blindside here, with Red being taken out 8-2, largely due to this perception that Red wanted to reconcile his differences with Cam, and that Red and Cam working together would be more dangerous than if Cam was on his own, which led to Red being taken out here in a big blindside here. And obviously, I think Red's a pretty mediocre player, and he obviously has a lot of interesting ideas when it comes to masculinity and not great views in the grand scheme of things. But even outside that, I found him to be a pretty bad player for the most part, where even though he was mostly loyal to the CIRIE side, and he was even going so far as to sabotage Cam's HOH to protect the CIRIE side and to let them in on what was happening, I felt like it led to Red being taken out of the game. He was obviously sketched out from early on by other people due to him not wanting to talk game, and even moving forward, the entire feud with Cam that led to them not working together is pretty ridiculous as well. And in general, I find Red to be a pretty bad player, and he's now out of the game now. So because of that, he is here at number 13. And with that, there are 12 players left in the game to talk about, and as usual, I'll be ranking them based on how likely I think they are to win based on their current game position. By number 12, and it kind of hurts me to say this, but we actually have the person that is the most likely to be evicted on Thursday night, and here we have Felicia. And it's a bit of a shame to see Felicia going out here. Now, obviously, she does get unlucky with the HOH result, with Cam winning HOH. However, even before then, it seemed like she had largely fallen out of favor with the CIRIE side due to her trying to play more individualistically, like leaking CIRIE's final twos to other players in the house. That really sowed a lot of distrust there, to where she was very much in the conversation to be left out of the vote last week, where the talk was to blindside Felicia and Mimi. However, they were looped into the plan at the last moment, but even then, she ended up taking a lot of the blame for the Red blindside, where she was shown being the one to stop the flip from happening, where she was trying to flip the vote to save Red, when in reality, it made it seem like she was stopping the flip to keep Red. So I think through that, she kind of gets a lot of the blame there. That leads to her being put up on the block. And even though like it was a pretty bad move by Can to put her up in the first place, in reality, she was probably going to be targeted within the next few weeks anyway, given how much she has fallen from the CIRIE core's favor, to where she is now so expendable that they are like pretty much going to let her go. Now, yes, there has been talk of a flip, namely from America trying to pull in the numbers to vote out IZZY. However, I just think it's not going to work, and Felicia is going to be taken out as a result, which has been unfortunate considering how likable she's been for much of the season, and how in most other seasons I feel like her like doing this work wouldn't be that bad. But because of how loose information is and how much of a stranglehold CIRIE has over information in the game, it just led to her being in a pretty bad spot the moment she was trying to branch out from this group. And considering all these circumstances, she's probably going to be voted out now. So it's for all those reasons that she's probably going to be voted out. And while we have seen in previous weeks that flips have been entertained, I just don't think that this one's going to be successful. And because of that, I do have Felicia here at number 12. Now we're moving on to number 11, and we have a pretty notable figure to get into here, but we actually have the current HOH, and here we have Cameron. And I do have to applaud him a bit for at least trying to make a bigger move and trying to shake at the core power structure, where his plan for the week was to backdoor CIRIE in a spot where she would hopefully be taken out, or if not, at least target IZZY in case the veto wasn't used. However, I feel like the way he goes about it is pretty misguided, where first up, he does pretty much blindside the house with these nominations of IZZY and Felicia, where he spends a lot of the first day scaring people over what he's going to do, and he made it seem like he was going to put up Jag and Blue, really instilling fear, particularly in Blue, where they had that conversation where he pretty much implies to Blue that he's going to put her up, and she's like putting on this whole performance, and it's like all pretty bad. And while the blind side made for interesting feeds, I don't think it was really necessary, as I feel like it really hindered Can's ability to use his HOH to build something for him in the future and to gather information. Whereas I feel like had he talked to more people and tried to gather information, like it would have led to him making more effective nominations and really a more efficient plan to ensure that he actually took a shot. But by him really scaring people, trying to pull out this blind side, that and also his own ego making him think that he knows everything and that he doesn't need to talk to anyone to get information, it really leads to this misguided nomination of Felicia, where again, putting up Izzy makes sense, but I feel like putting up Felicia just gives the CIRIE core such an easy out, where again, they were already thinking of taking her out within the next few weeks. And plus, with so many people being willing to keep the noms the same, it just would have made it a lot harder for him to have the veto used in a spot where he would have been able to backdoor CIRIE. So I think that alone was pretty misguided as well. And again, I feel like he didn't really do anything to solidify his game in the long term. But really, the only thing he really does is build this deal with Jag to where he promised he wouldn't put him up in exchange for keeping him safe the following week. But even that plan has got out now, and it makes people not trust Jag as much. And I feel like moving forward, Cam is still going to be a pretty massive target in the future, where at this point he's kind of shown his cards a bit. And I feel like with him being unable to take a shot at one of these really big power players, it's just going to make him continue to be at the bottom, continue to be a pretty consensus target in the future. And I feel like Cam's own ego is going to get in his own way at the end of the day. Now, yes, America did talk some sense into him by saying that Jared was part of the reason that he was in so much danger last week, how he was going to be the target and stuff. And whether that'll stick, we'll have to see. But I feel like with the way we've seen Cam play, I just don't have too much confidence in him to really play optimally, which is why I do have him here at number 11. Now moving on to number 10, and really the only reason this person isn't lower is because they aren't as immediate of a target compared to Cam, but I still feel like this person has played particularly poorly, and I think this week only further solidified that they're just not a very good player. But here we have Blue. And I find Blue to be pretty frustrating in her gameplay this week, where I feel like the main thing to talk about is when she was included in these talks with Jag and America to build a secret alliance in an effort to try to rally the numbers together and potentially take out the CIRIE side at some point. And we do see Blue agreeing to this, but then she immediately rats out this alliance to the CIRIE core. She rats it out to Jared, she rats it out to Izzy. And through all of this, she really further undermines the trust that people have from America and Jag, to where they don't really trust her at this point. And it really is mind-boggling why she would throw Jag under the bus, to where today she was even talking to Jared about how Jag has no loyalties, despite the fact that Jag is clearly shown to be one of the most loyal people in the game, and that he just wants to find his people that he can really put his trust in. So I feel like through Blue really undermined this alliance right from the get-go, I feel like it only further highlights that she's just not a very good player. She's way too loose with information. And plus, this alliance was beneficial to her, to where had she committed to it and actually kept her mouth shut, she could have been in a great spot moving forward. But I feel like through her exposing this alliance, it not only destroys the prospect of that happening, but it doesn't really build her favor with the CIRIE core either, to where no one in that group is really going to take her to the end of the game. They are already thinking about getting rid of her at some point, and I feel like it's all her fault. So I find that aspect of her game very frustrating, and I can't put her any higher than here simply because of that. But again, I feel like Can's probably going to be targeted over her next week, so I can't really put her at the bottom, but I kind of wanted to. But really, with how poorly she played this week, I do have her here at number 10. Now we're moving on to number 9, and we actually have the person that seemed likely to go home last week, but with them staying, I do have them a couple spots higher, and here we have Jag. And again, Jag survived. Mind you, I don't really know how much credit to give him for surviving, but he survived. And it seems like he could have been in some danger this week. However, he was able to make a deal with Cam to where they promised not to go after each other. Mind you, that deal ended up getting exposed by a lot of the house, to where a lot of people are actually kind of worried about it. And I think another knock is the fact that he is kind of a secondary target coming into next week, where at this point, like the talk is about how it's going to be Cam and Jag next, which I think is not great on his end. Plus, there was some prospects of him being backdoor this week where Jared really wanted him to be the backdoor target instead. Mind you, I don't think Cam was going to go through with it, but it was still something that was being tempted with. You also have the alliance that I just mentioned between America and Blue. That could have been something until Blue ratted it out. And I feel like Jag is someone that is kind of improving to a degree, but I still feel like he's still kind of hung up in the past. I feel like he's still not getting the information that he needs. I feel like he's kind of making the same mistakes that he's been making before. And I feel like there's still some danger that he has in the foreseeable future. But again, compared to where he was last week, where it did seem like he was going to go home, like it was a bit of an upgrade. And plus, I feel like he didn't play as actively bad as someone like a Blue. So I feel like for that, I do have him one spot higher, but I still feel like he's in some danger. And because of that, he is here at number 9. Now I'm moving on to number 8, and I still don't think this person's in a great spot. However, I think there is at least some promise based on stuff that's happened within the last few days. But here we have BOWIE Jane. Now, obviously, the first thing to bring up is the fact that she was blindsided at the vote where she and Cam were the only ones to vote to keep red. So obviously that's not particularly great. And I feel like for a lot of the week, she didn't really do that much to address it, where she seemed more so complacent more than anything else. However, within the last day or so, like we have seen her play the game a bit more, where we saw like her talking with America about possibly working together. I feel like that's something at least. Though at the same time, like there's the prospect of IZZY picking up on it, as we saw through that confrontation that they had. So I think there's that to consider. I do think BOWIE is starting to pick at the pieces a little bit. Now, again, how much she'll sustain that, we'll have to see. However, I still have the same long-term issues with her game, where I feel like she's still one of the least active players in the game. Like, definitely the player that has one of the least amount of respect. People don't really like her that much. And it's still not looking that great. But there is still some promise for her. And while there is talk about her going on the block next week, I still think she's a bit safer in the game compared to the people we already talked about. So that was enough to have her a little bit higher. Though really, I still feel like she has a long road ahead if she wants to seriously become a contender, which is why she is here at number 8. Now moving on to number 7, and I had this person a bit higher last week because of the opportunity that they had to take on a better position. And while the opportunity is still present, I feel like this past week was not that great for them. But here we have Mimi. And again, I think Mimi in the grand scheme of things is still probably safer compared to the people we already talked about. But I still feel like this was a not great week for her. Where first up, she was one of the last few people to be included on the plan to take out Red, where there was serious talk about leaving her and Felicia out of it, which isn't great. Moving forward, like you have the fact that she doesn't want to keep Felicia in the game over IZZY due to her loyalty to the brown sugar babes, which I think is a misstep, as I feel like Felicia is someone that's closer to Mimi than she is to IZZY. And plus, I feel like by sticking true to the brown sugar babe, she's essentially putting herself in a losing position, which I don't think is particularly great. There's also a pretty notable moment during one of her conversations with Felicia where she says that she doesn't want information, which is kind of insane there. And I think on top of that, she's still someone that's not in that great of a position. And I feel like she hasn't really responded well to what's been happening in the game, where I feel like through that, it's pretty clear that she hasn't really been taking up the reins as much as it seemed like at the end of last week, which I don't particularly like. Now, again, I still feel like she could very well align with CORY in America and be a part of that eventual flip. However, I feel like the developments that have happened this week just haven't given me too much confidence that she has really changed too much. So I feel like for that reason, I can't really have her any higher. Though, again, I still feel like there are opportunities for her, more so than the people already talked about. But again, I feel like 7 is about as high as I can put her. Now I'm moving on to number 6, and this person has technically moved up from this past week. However, I still feel like there's some danger spots for them in the near future, but here we have America. And I think America had an interesting week this week where she was obviously working more with CORY. It seemed like they kind of made up for their little feud at the end of last week. And she is emerging as this underground leader of the opposition to the CIRIE side, where she has been talking more openly about taking shots at IZZY and CIRIE. To where even this week, like she's been very much on board with taking out IZZY, which probably isn't going to work, and to where even her closest ally in CORY isn't really on board to take out IZZY this week. So I think you can definitely knock her for not really getting her way here. And it seemed like as of yesterday, she was still like on board to take out Izzy this week, which isn't great. She obviously is trying to build more numbers, such as that alliance that she made with Blue and Jag that immediately got ratted out, which isn't great. You also have Jared and the fact that he was so anti Corey in America this week to where he was talking about putting America up on the block next week if he won HOH, which isn't great there, though he has largely calmed down since then. You also have Matt, who has been kind of anti America recently, though he has seemed to mellow out to a degree. So there are definitely like ways in which she could still be in trouble due to her open opposition to the Sri side. Though admittedly her target like isn't as high compared to the likes of Jag or Cam. So I think that's something to consider, but I still feel like she is someone that's probably going to get more blame for more things in the future with regards to taking shots compared to Corey. So I feel like that's something that's holding me back from her. But I still feel like she's in an okay spot to where she shouldn't be a target next week unless things go really wrong. But at the same time, I feel like there isn't really much of an end game for her right now, as I feel like she still needs to do more effective work at solidifying these numbers in order to make her work effective. So I feel like because of that, I can't really have her any higher than here, though I still feel like there's some potential for her, which is why she's here at number 6. Now moving on to number 5, and I wanted to put this person lower, as I feel like this week just further highlighted just how bad of a player they are. But I feel like they have kind of calmed down to a degree, and I still can't really deny the fact that they are in a solid position, even though I feel like a lot of it's unearned. But once again, we do have Jared. And I feel like there's a lot that can be said about Jared from this week. Now, I feel like one thing that's kind of helping them to a degree is the extent to which Cam trusts Jared. Where even though Jared was the HOH last week and had targeted Cam, like Cam still trusted them for a lot of the week to where he felt like Jared was on the same page. And you do have to give Jared a bit of credit for that, even though like America did talk with Cam earlier about how Jared was kind of in on the plan to target them, so they are kind of questioning it. So I do give them credit for at least placating Cam long enough to not use the veto. However, I feel like so much of what they did after the veto was pretty actively bad. Where first up you have like their whole like beef with Core in America, where he has spent a lot of the week like openly talking about how much he hated Core in America for like the fact that she was talking about the fact that Corey had shared the fact that his brother was on Survivor. And it even culminated in a point where he told Corey to his face that he would put up America next week if he won HOH, which is pretty bad on its own. But then moving forward, like you had the fact that he really abused his power with the veto, like where he just, for whatever reason, was just trying to make people paranoid and uncomfortable, where he told Jag that he was going to use the veto to backdoor him. You had him telling Court America that maybe America could be backdoored, and all of this was just completely unnecessary and was completely unwarranted as well, to where like it really didn't really do much to help this game either. And really the reason he was allowed to run around and do all this crazy stuff was because CIRIE couldn't really talk game due to the punishment that you got during the veto. And all this really made it clear to the likes of Corey and America that Jared was just not on their side, and it made it so that Jared's target was really accelerated to a large degree by his own actions. And it really isn't until CIRIE was able to calm him down that he was finally starting to think rationally again. However, that still doesn't take away from how actively bad he was playing. And I think the worst part of it was the fact that he wanted to target Izzy over Felicia. And had he done that and targeted Izzy, it would have been disastrous for his game, given how loyal Izzy was to the CIRIE side and how much she was valuable to them in competitions. And plus, it would just further open up Corey in America to target the likes of Jared in the future. So I think the way he played this week was so bad, not to mention the fact that he was basically handed the veto as well, as it was the Yankee swap comp. Matt even won the competition as a whole, but chose to give the veto to Jared in order to get what he thought was a reward. So even then, he didn't really win the veto. So I feel like on the whole, like this week just once again solidified that if CIRIE's not in the house, Jared is screwed. Like he cannot navigate the game at all. But again, he is still like aligned with CIRIE. CIRIE is working to keep him. And I feel like the amount of damage control that CIRIE was doing in response to Jared's own actions really highlights even more how good of a player CIRIE is versus like how good of a player Jared is. So again, I feel like my position on Jared hasn't really changed. I feel like I had to knock him due to how actively bad he was playing for a lot of the week. But again, it seems like he'll be better off next week. But considering the circumstances, I do have him here at number 5. Now I'm moving on to number 4. And really, I don't think this person's much better than Jared. And I feel like they still aren't like free from mistakes, but I feel like their mistakes were not as blatant this week. But here we have Matt. And I think Matt still has some issues. Like I think he's like still like kind of not in the best position in the world. I feel like he's also someone that spent a lot of the week like kind of undermining his own position and at the same time being focused on being against America. Though again, I feel like that's kind of cooled down to a degree. And really the main reason I have Matt above Jared is that even though he's not in as solid of a position as Jared, I feel like he made fewer active mistakes compared to Jared. So I feel like that was enough to have him above him. Though at the same time, I feel like he is someone that could easily slip up and start like going back to his old ways, like him like sort of ratting everything out to CIRIE and potentially turning back against America depending on how certain comp results go. But for now, I did decide to put him here at number 4. Now moving on to number 3, and this is kind of weird considering this person is currently on the block, and in general, this person has further shown that they're not really in it to win it, but I still feel like they're in a good enough position, especially compared to the people already talked about. But I do have Izzy here, and again, I can see a debate for Izzy being lower here, particularly with what this week revealed about her game, to where even though she has occasionally like questioned whether she should be playing more for herself, like she has ultimately gone back to the CIRIE side, and she has even sort of twisted it to her thinking that her working for CIRIE and Jared is somehow her playing selfishly or playing for herself, which is a bit of a weird statement to make in general. But I think also like this week presented a very interesting possibility where it was possible that her and CIRIE could have been on the block together. And obviously, she has this information, the fact that CIRIE and Jared are related, which obviously would have been such a devastating blow in that position to where she could have potentially like turned the house against CIRIE had they been on the block together. However, like through conversations, it's become quite apparent that even if that scenario did happen, it doesn't seem like Izzy would have pulled the trigger there. She would have been happy almost to go home over CIRIE or possibly even Jared in that spot. So I think that just highlights the fact that she's just not in it to win it for herself, which I think, again, could be debated as a reason why she should be lower on the list. And obviously, you have the fact that America is trying to rally some numbers against Izzy, and it's possible that some people could even vote against Izzy at this next eviction. You have the fact that Cam like put her on the block specifically to target her. So I think there are plenty of reasons to have Izzy lower on the list. However, I just couldn't justify it as again, I feel like she's still like in a pretty solid position. It does look like she's gonna stay. I mean, it doesn't seem like people are going to target her in most cases next week unless like America wins HOH. Though even then, I could see CORY maybe talking her out of that. She still has a good relationship with CORY to where CORY could keep her around. And honestly, I think the other factor is simply the fact that everyone else has glaring holes in their game. I mean, really, most of the people on this list have issues with their game. It's just that I feel like Izzy's aren't going to be as detrimental for her in the coming weeks unless she's on the block against CIRIE, which isn't impossible, but I feel like everyone else like either has been playing too passively or they're in some danger next week or they're playing actively bad. I feel like those are all things that sort of propelled those people below on the list. Whereas I feel like Izzy, like when you're weighing all these factors, yes, she is probably going to have a lot of trouble by the end of the game. But I feel like with the way things are, like I couldn't really feel comfortable putting too many people above her given her current state in the house. And plus the fact that it does seem like she's going to stay by the end of the week. So I think for all those reasons, I do have to put Izzy here at number 3. Now moving on to number 2. And I did previously have this person at number 2 as I feel like this person could still be in some danger, but I feel like if things flip, I feel like this person stands to benefit probably the most out of anyone that we already talked about. But here we have CORY, And again, I feel like Corey, the thing that separates him from America is that I feel like with like the things that Corey and America have been doing, it seems like America has taken the brunt of the blame for a lot of things to where it does seem like America would be targeted first over Corey. Now, yes, this week hasn't been ideal for them, where Jared has spent a lot of the week being pretty anti Corey and America. Though again, it did seem like Jared would have put up America over Corey. So I think that's something to consider. And even moving forward, like Jared has kind of cooled down to where it does seem like that they are on okay terms again. So there's that. You also have the whole alliance that America made and her entire push to take out Izzy this week. I feel like if anyone's going to take the brunt for that, it's probably going to be America. Now, yes, America is obviously it's Corey's closest ally and obviously his showman. So losing America wouldn't be great. But I still feel like they're in less overall danger than they probably were last week or 2 weeks ago. So there's that. I also feel like Corey is only further like motivated now to win HOH in the future, where he got the information from America that Matt had told CIRIE that he had won the power and that CIRIE had lied about playing in the comp to get the power. And him recognizing that CIRIE didn't tell him that information, like made it clear to Corey that he is not really in the core of that. And I think the fact that he is now a bit more willing to win HOH in the future than he was before is a positive sign for him, especially when it seemed like he was close to winning the last HOH until it seemed like he threw it. So I think that's something to consider. So I think Corey is probably in a better position and probably has more of an opportunity now to take shots. However, I still feel like there are plenty of danger spots as well. And really, the main reason I have him above all these other people is that I feel like while he may not be in as a solid of a position as Jared, I think Corey has done more effective work in setting himself up to make moves in the future compared to Jared, who I feel like has been pretty much handed everything. And I feel like Izzy is in a more solid spot in the future, where obviously Izzy has a solid relationship with Corey, so I think that's something to consider as well. So I think Corey is still playing the game probably as well as he could given the circumstances. But again, he's not the most dominant player, and because of that, he is here at number 2. And now, at number 1, the person I believe is the most likely to win Big Brother 25 right now is still CIRIE. Now, this was actually a pretty bad HOH result for CIRIE, obviously, as Cameron wanted to backdoor her, obviously. Though he really fumbled the ball in not just putting her up on the block, which really he should have done, if we're being honest here. However, she does get a pretty fortunate veto result where Jared ends up getting the veto. And obviously, once Jared gets the sense that Cam was going to backdoor her, it just made it so that Jared was never seriously going to use the veto. Now, she was sidelined for a few days due to a punishment where she was essentially tethered to FELICIA, which really hindered her game docs given that FELICIA was going to be the target for that week. And in the meantime, Jared really did a lot of damage to both of their positions. But once she's able to get out of that punishment, she's able to make very quick damage control to where things seem to be all right at this point. Jared's no longer like going to target America, and he seems to be back on board with the plan. So obviously all that's pretty good, and I think this week, again, like she's still coming out this week probably in the best spot, though it also seems like there are more people willing to take shots at her now than there were before, where obviously Can came pretty close to backdooring her had the veto been used, and even moving forward, you had the likes of America that would be a bit open to putting her on the block if she were to win HOH. So I think that's not ideal, obviously, but I still feel like compared to everyone else, she has the fewest holes in her game, and I feel like she's still the most dominant player around. I don't think there's really anything this week that really knocked her off a top contention, especially considering this massive danger spot that was ahead of her. So I think for all those reasons, I still had to put her here at number 1. And there we go. That will do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. Really helps out with the channel. Now I'll be back again next week to update the power rankings again, so you can stay tuned for that. I will be live streaming the live show on Thursday night, so you can see my live reaction there. You can go check it out. I also have a Patreon now, so if you want to consider supporting the channel, you can click the link in the description. And if you haven't already, you can join the Discord server by clicking the link in the description as well. There's a lot of stuff coming your way. But for now, that's the video. See ya.